Oh no, not the cloud. Okay, whatever. I guess I'll find it. All right, so we're recording. Awesome.
I'm sorry.
Hey, I am Angela, Coach Angie, actually, and I am really excited about today's conversation because I have with me someone that speaks my language and gets it, and her name is Dr. Ayla, right?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm gonna just let you take it away. Tell us about you, how you got into what you do, and all of that stuff, and why you love it, and then we'll start with the conversation.
That sounds great. Well, I am so delighted to be here with you, Angie, and appreciate you asking me to have this conversation about things that we are both very passionate about. And as you said, I'm Dr. Ayla Donlin, and I play a couple of different roles, but relative to our conversation today is my role as a wellness coach and consultant. I own my own business, Ayla Donlin Wellness. I've been in the business of wellness for a long time. I've been in the fitness and wellness industries for over 15 years. I've been in leadership in higher education for almost that time, about 14 years. And the topic of my doctoral dissertation was actually on well-being. So this is something that's very near and dear to my heart. And as I've developed professionally and just continued to build relationships professionally and personally, I realized that something that I'm incredibly passionate about is helping other people create a little bit more space in their lives for well-being,
Mhm.
particularly through challenging workouts, healthy recipes, and guided meditations. Those three seem to be my jam. And I became a mom 2.5 years ago. I have a daughter named Lucy. And so, again, as I've grown and developed, and as my career has evolved, I've really decided to focus in on hardworking moms as the group that I like to work with to help them create some more space for well-being through some of those practices that I just mentioned.
That sounds amazing. I'm getting goosebumps because I'm really really excited, and I think we have so much in common.
I know. When we talked on the phone the other day, I was like, I'm so excited to get to know this woman
Yeah.
better.
Yeah, it's crazy. I was telling my mom, I was like, yeah, I have this interview today. And she's like, well, how'd y'all meet? I was like, Instagram. Like,
I
who would
know.
have that? So awesome, awesome stuff. So I have my questions here. So that's why you'll be seeing me looking down and up from time to time. But we're talking, I wanted to kind of, start our conversation just with the thought that with this 2020, there's a lot going on in 2020. And right now, we've pretty much been like, what, in quarantine or whatever you want to call it, dealing with the pandemic, dealing with, and we're not going to go into a political conversation. That's not what this is about, but there's a lot going on that's happened this year. And I think that, and I found this with my clients, I don't know about you, but there's definitely a fatigue going on. You can feel it. We're kind of over it, but it's not over. And it's just kind of, there's just so much. And so the topic of happiness and cultivating happiness and is what we're gonna dive into today, because I think people, they spend time doing what they love, doing what that makes them happy, but then we're like, okay, like, is this ever gonna end? And I think that's just me, but I think that's where a lot of people are. So my first question that I have for you, just to get your perspective and your thoughts,
Yeah.
is what are your thoughts on pursuing happiness? Because you hear that all the time. Like, I'm going to go and I'm going to become happy. This is going to make me happy. That's going to make me happy. So, what are your thoughts on pursuing happiness? Is it something that we can find? Is it something that we can actually grab a hold of and attain?
Yeah, I really appreciate that question. And before I respond to that, I want to acknowledge that I am most certainly feeling the fatigue of the
Mhm.
pandemic and all that has come with it. And I practice gratitude on a regular basis and think about
Mhm.
how grateful I am for where I am and where my family is in light of all that's happened in 2020.
Right.
Even with that, I'm still fatigued. I think that that is so real for so many people. So I want to acknowledge that,
Mhm.
and appreciate that, and appreciate the hard time that so many have had and are having. And
Yeah.
as you mentioned, it's multifaceted, right? It's not just the pandemic. As a culture, we're experiencing big existential shifts that are necessary. And that plays a role in how we're feeling. So I wanted to acknowledge that and to address the question of, is happiness something that we can pursue or find? The language that I prefer to use is that, just like actually the title of this conversation, is that
Mhm.
it's something that we can cultivate,
Mhm.
or it's something that we can nurture. But probably most often, what I choose to use is it's something that we can practice.
Yeah.
Because I truly believe that well-being and happiness aren't things that we find magically somewhere, that they exist somewhere outside of ourselves and that we need to
Right.
go and find them. I really think that it involves intention and
Mhm.
purposeful pursuit of practice
Mhm.
daily and in
Yes, in
different
different
ways.
ways.
And I think if we look at it as something that we can pursue or find, like I said, it pushes it outside of ourselves and it almost makes it a little bit less under our control. But if
Right.
we think of it as something that we can cultivate and practice, and there are definitely certain levers that we can pull on at different times when we need it
Right.
to bring up the type of happiness or the type of well-being that we need that moment. So
Right.
that's my perspective on it, and I think that the scientific literature shows the same thing, right? That it's really
Yeah.
something that's practiced. That there are different aspects and elements that we really need to practice in order to experience it
Right.
regularly.
I like that. It's a practice and it means that it's also intentional and it puts the ball back in our court. Like
Yeah,
we are responsible for cultivating really the lives that we want to cultivate, whether we want to be unhappy or happy, it's up to us.
absolutely.
So, um, how do you think happiness or even the lack thereof, how does that impact us as people, as an individual? So, for example, how would happiness, and let's just go with the positive, how would happiness or practicing happiness help me on a daily basis?
Yeah, I really like that question too, in terms of, yeah, like if I'm trying to muster up motivation and courage, and if I want to engage with people in a certain way,
Mhm.
does my happiness, does my well-being influence that? And the short answer, I believe, is definitely yes.
Mhm.
And so we can, like you said, be very intentional about cultivating the happiness and the well-being that we want in order to have the motivation that we want to achieve the goals that we have set before us and to
Mhm.
interact with people in a way that's the energy that we want to put out into the world and also cultivates the types of relationships that we want to have. And so, I mean, something that I've experienced is if I'm not feeling my most well,
Mhm.
I have a tendency to pull in and I don't want to engage people as much. And
Right.
the negative self talk can really spiral at that point. And so then with that, my motivation starts to deflate
Yeah.
until, and those two feed off of each other, right? Because then I'm not getting any positive vibes from other people. And I'm too much in my own head going through my own little spiral. So I think
Right.
if we can break that cycle and then put into practice some of the things that we know work very effectively to boost up our levels of well-being and happiness,
Yeah.
we experience more motivation and we experience more positive interactions and relationships with people.
Yes. I love that. And I'm kind of like in my head seeing, we practice things that cultivate happiness. And then I'm seeing it's like a process. So then I'm also seeing how that practice is going to fuel our motivation to go out and do the things, within the world and be a positive influence and a positive light in the world. So it
Yes.
definitely is a ripple effect on how we are showing up. So let's talk about what those practices are. How are we going to cultivate happiness? And I know you know all about it, so let's just dive right into it. So I'll just let you take it away.
Yeah, and in our conversation that we had prior to going live, Angie, we talked about how you have background and experience in this too. So I'm really excited to hear your thoughts as well. I
Mhm.
really like to use the framework of the PERMA theory of well-being because I think there are components of that that are very easily put into action and that they are things that we can take action on as we feel like we might need a little bit more of that particular element in our lives. So I'll
Mhm.
take a moment to define PERMA well-being theory, which was
Yep.
developed by Martin Seligman and his colleagues. Martin Seligman is one of the founders of the positive psychology movement. I know we're both big fans of that field.
Yeah.
But something else that I wanted to recommend in terms of putting some of these practices into play, I don't know if you've taken, Angie, through Coursera. There's a course offered that's called The Science of Wellbeing by Dr. Laurie Santos. Are you familiar with that one?
No, I'm not. I'm not.
It's a free 10-week course. Dr. Laurie Santos is a professor and she's a phenomenal teacher of the science behind well-being and how our brain often tells us certain things that are going to make us happy that in fact don't, and how we can rewire those messages to actually pursue things that are going to make us a little bit more happy.
Yeah.
I wanted to recommend that course. I took it toward the beginning of the pandemic and really appreciated it. And Dr. Laurie Santos also has a podcast that's called the Happiness Lab. And that's a really great podcast as well. So those have very tangible, practical,
Yeah.
and resources too.
I wrote it down. I just wanted to go back really quick because you said
Yeah.
something that I thought was very intriguing. You said that that happiness is sometimes based on what our brain thinks would make us happy. So how do you think we develop these I'm trying to figure out how to say it. Where does that come from? Where does that thinking come from of what we think will make us happy? That was in a very eloquent way to say it, but you know what I'm trying to get at,
I
right?
do. I know exactly what you mean. And I think maybe instead of it's our brain that's telling us certain things, it's our brain that's telling us those things because society has
Yeah.
filled us with certain messages. And
Mhm.
so we have misconceptions about what happiness is and how we obtain it. So a
Yeah.
lot of it is materialistic things, right? Like making a lot of money, having a job that makes you a lot of money, having material goods like a big house and a car and all
Mhm.
those things, and how, in fact, the literature shows, like
Yeah.
evidence-based research is telling us those things aren't, in fact, what actually makes us happy. Our happiness levels actually plateau after a certain level of income. So it's
Mhm.
not like there's a direct relationship between the amount of money you make and the amount of happiness you experience. And
Yeah.
so that's a misconception I think many of us have. And a lot of us can end up falling into what's termed, or falling onto, I should say, what's termed the hedonic treadmill, where we can continue to push happiness over the horizon. That's a
Mhm.
statement that Sean Acor often says is, it's like we say, oh, I'm going to be happy when I achieve
Yeah.
or when I get this, and then
Right.
we get X. And immediately we set our sights on Y and we're chasing
Yes.
Y. And so it's like this constant treadmill of pushing happiness just
Yes.
over the horizon instead of like claiming it now and putting
Yeah.
into practice the things that can give it to us now. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I do remember Sean Acor mentioning that.
Yeah.
I will be happy when, and it's you get there, but then you realize it's not really that all that cracked up. It was that you built
Yeah.
in your mind. So, and then
Yeah.
we're on to the next thing.
Oh, go ahead, Angie.
No, just saying, and then we're on to the next thing. And don't really just sit there and I know I have, I guess, I don't know if I would say it's a habit or whatever, but I know that I'm a very goal oriented person. And so when
Yeah.
I reach that goal, and I think my husband probably got on me the other day about this, I reached a goal or whatever, and I'm like, okay, like, let's go. What's the next thing? And he's like, can you just
Yeah.
sit and you celebrate that you achieved this goal? And I was like,
Yeah.
meh.
Yeah, and
Let's just
that aspect, Angie, is what Dr. Santos would refer to as the rewirement of savoring, like taking a moment
go.
when we do achieve a goal or when we do have a really satisfying life moment, like a meaningful connection
Mhm.
with a loved one or even a stranger, and just like taking the moment to pause, soak it in, and really savor it. And
Yeah.
that, in fact, can give us another. So we get the boost of well being from the achievement or from the positive connection. And then we get another boost by savoring and reflecting on that. So I think
Right.
those are really meaningful.
Yeah, yeah. I need to work on that. Add that to my list of things I want to work on.
Me too.
All right, so let's dive into those practices. You have talked about PERMA. You've
Yep.
you've given a little bit more insight about what that is and where the whole theory comes from. So let's go into each of those areas of PERMA.
You bet. Yeah. So as I mentioned, it's a theory developed by Martin Seligman and his colleagues, PERMA well-being theory. And the acronym stands for P is positive emotions, E is engagement, R is positive relationships,
Mhm,
M is meaning, and A is achievement or accomplishment. And
mhm,
the theory, what it posits is that all of these different elements can be measured independently, and that humans are naturally going to gravitate toward these elements to achieve well being. And that these elements together help us to define and measure our overall state of well being. So we can
mhm,
pump up the lever and boost any of those five elements, and in turn, the theory would be that we're boosting up our overall well-being levels.
mhm.
Yeah,
Right. So
yeah.
let's start with the first one, positive emotions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So what is that? What would be an example of that?
Yeah, there's a great researcher, Barbara Fredrickson, out of the University of North Carolina. She's dedicated her professional career to the study of positive emotion, and
Mhm,
she's identified the top 10 positive emotions that humans generally experience. And I'll just name a few of those. One would be awe, another, of course, would be love, another is gratitude. And then there's 10 different emotions if you want to check out Dr. Fredrickson's work. But the number one positive emotion that we can most easily self-generate is gratitude.
mm,
And so I think that's a great place to start when you're trying to bump up the element of positive emotions. There's so many different gratitude practices, and I think those have become much more
yeah,
common and much more pop culture savvy.
yes.
And so there's gratitude journaling.
Mhm,
There's the three good things exercise. For those who aren't familiar with that, it's where you identify either in the day or in a week, depending on the time frame that you want to put on it. You identify three good things that happened in that time frame and to
mhm,
what you attribute those good things. And the attribution part is really important because in a way that's kind of like the savoring, because you're really thinking through, okay, this is the positive thing that happened, but why
yeah,
did it happen? How did it happen? And
right,
it's great if you can put an internal locus of control on it, meaning you can identify a way that you influenced that positive outcome to
right.
happen. Yeah, so
Yeah, so
that's
you
the
can
three
do
good
it
things.
more. You want to do it more. And I do actually, sometimes when I'm journaling, I used to just write down like random things that I'm grateful for. But I do like the idea of, and I think I forget where I got this idea from. It's some very, very similar. I can't think of it right now, but just really zoning on just three good things. I
Yeah.
think sometimes when people, when you say, well, just write down what you're grateful for, even that idea becomes a little bit overwhelming. So when you give,
Mhm.
and maybe because people are really very goal centric, just the three, like just what three positive things are you, happen today? So I think
Yes,
that's it. And it's attainable, something that's easy to do.
totally. And Emily, I'm so glad that you like the three good things practice. My friend Emily is tuned in. Thanks for joining us, Em.
Yes. So let's move on to the next one, engagement.
Yeah. I think one of the best ways, well, let me say it this way. I think engagement is an individual practice in terms of what things, what activities engage us, right? So what really engages me might not necessarily engage another person.
Right.
And so for me, my practice of mindfulness and meditation is
Hmm.
one of the best ways for me to practice engagement, because not only am I fully engaged or immersed or trying to immerse myself in that meditation or my mindfulness practice, but then it carries on and has a ripple effect throughout the day. My
Right.
focus and concentration are better throughout the rest of the
Hmm.
day if I'm doing that. But
Yes.
another thing that engages me incredibly is like what we're doing right now. If I'm having a conversation with another person about topics like this that we're both passionate about and interested in, I mean, I could be engaged in this all day, Angie. I know we're going to put a time frame
Yes.
on it, but seriously.
Yeah, no, and I think another way you can look at it is flow. Like that's like my favorite word.
Yes.
And when I was working for another organization, we talked a lot about flow. And when you're in the flow of something, you're like really immersed in it, you're super engaged, and you can do that for a long period of time. And I think that not only when you are just trying to cultivate happiness on a daily basis, but it's a really good practice when you're thinking about your career
Yes.
and looking at the elements of where you are in your current career. What do you find yourself really engaged in? Like it could be an Excel spreadsheet, I don't know. But just
Totally.
paying attention to the different responsibilities and the tasks that you just find yourself like really into for whatever reason. I see Mr. B. Cool said what you are attributing that you're grateful for too. He liked that. So awesome. So let's go to the next one. Positive relationships. I know this is a big one for a lot of people. Who you are around makes such a difference in your level of happiness.
Yes. I think Martin Seligman has a quote that I'm not going to get spot on, but I'll paraphrase, which is that positive relationships are the most reliable antidote to
Mhm.
the downs of life in order to bring us, and they're the most reliable up.
Yes.
The way that we can boost it and connect with other people. And a practice that actually comes from Seligman's research is the gratitude visit. I don't know if you're familiar with that,
I'm
Angie.
not that one. Yeah.
Um, and so that would be that you pick someone in your life who has done something that you're grateful for, and you try to get as specific as possible as you're writing
Mhm.
the letter to them. It can be handwritten, can be typed, whatever folks' preferences are. And I
Yeah.
think now that we're in this digital age, like recording a video would be very cool too, in the context of the pandemic.
Yeah. That's a great
But
idea.
you write this letter and then you go visit and deliver it to the person. And again, because of the context of the pandemic, maybe it's recording the video or doing a live video chat and reading the letter to the person.
Okay.
But the science around this shows that not only does the writer of the letter who's delivering it get a boost, but so does the individual who's receiving it. And then the relationship between the two people gets a boost as
Yeah.
well in terms of just the degree of connection and feeling, the reciprocity of the relationship.
I think that is an awesome idea. Um, because in fact, my sister, she sent me a text message last night, just out of the blue, and just really saying how grateful she is to have me as a sister. And I was like, where is this coming from?
Yeah.
And so I love that idea, especially with sending a video and of you reading the video, to just share with someone that you're grateful for them, that will inspire them. And I don't know if you've ever gotten a message from someone that you said something positive to and saying, hey, I thank you for being my friend. And sometimes those messages um, are received when they are not feeling their best. So it's reciprocal, like you were saying. I think that's awesome.
Yeah,
Um,
I really like I don't know who said this, but it's a quote, that gratitude unexpressed is like wrapping a gift and not giving it.
yeah,
And so I
that's a
like to think
great.
of that as like gratitude is such a gift to express to someone else. I mean,
Mm,
in like you're getting a boost and that's lovely, but then you're
yeah.
also giving the gift of boosting someone else by expressing your gratitude to them. I love that your sister did that. Good job, sis.
Yeah, no, it's great. And I mean, what an awesome with the being on the brink of the holiday season. Think about how instead of just giving like I'm sure all the gifts are thoughtful, but go a little bit deeper and just tell someone that you're grateful for them and why you're grateful for them, and
Yeah.
write a letter. I think that's a very beautiful, that would be an amazing holiday season.
Yeah.
I love that. I have an idea from that. So let's talk about meaning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a big one. This is
Yeah,
like
it's deep.
the probably one of the most existential elements of the theory. So meaning is where we glean our sense of purpose from. It's the
Mhm.
sense of connectedness to a higher power and to others. And so
Yeah.
we can cultivate meaning by diving into our spiritual wellness, our spiritual well-being. So if you're
Mhm.
someone who has a relationship with God or a higher power, it's where you cultivate that and practice that.
Mhm.
I think another big part of it is how you experience your sense of connectedness and purpose with
Yeah.
and to other people. And so a big part of that, I know because of your background, Angie, you're familiar with like strengths assessments, like the
Mhm.
virtues in action, character strengths, and that kind of connects back with engagement.
Right.
Because if we can learn and know our strengths, we tend to be more engaged when we're practicing our strengths.
Right.
And we would generally experience higher levels of meaning or a greater sense of purpose if we're
Right.
acting from our strengths or using our strengths in different ways on a
Right.
regular basis too. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think it is also goes back to, when you're thinking through, and I think I use career a lot because we spend so much time working, but it does give you the opportunity to assess what it is that you like about certain roles that you're in. You may
Yeah.
not like the organization or the role, but there are elements that I think is worth paying attention to what is fueling you. Um, and I think other ways that you can, find meaning is just, getting out in nature and just learning to appreciate really the simple things. I think sometimes we're go, 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 we're on autopilot all the time and we're not paying attention. And I think this season of 2020 has forced us to slow down and pay attention because we can't go anywhere, and bringing back the meaning to our lives, to being with your family, being with yourself, learning yourself. What do you like to do? What do you not like to do?
Yeah.
And I mean, that can be a lot of tough work for people to take time to do. So I think when you're looking at, the silver lining of this year, it's giving us the opportunity to just take a couple of steps back and reassess. Are we going the direction that we want to go? And you have the time to redirect. So
Yeah.
let's move into the last one, which is achievement, right?
Yep. Mhm.
All right. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, so achievement or accomplishment would be our sense of setting meaningful goals and then
Mhm,
achieving them. And it'd be goals that are challenging but doable. And
mhm.
a lot of us have probably worked with the acronym SMART when setting goals:
Yep.
specific, measurable, action oriented, realistic, and time bound or timely. And
Right.
that framework is so lovely for setting goals and then being able to experience that sense of achievement. But I think
Right.
back to what we were talking about earlier, something that's so important about that, if you are an achiever, is
Mhm.
to not get caught up in that cycle. It's to
Yes.
break the cycle of constantly pushing the next thing out and to say, like, okay, I achieved my goal, pause, savor, appreciate, feel grateful, and
Mhm.
then move on to
Yeah.
the next thing. That's so important. And celebrate it with other people. Something I
Yes.
talk about all the time with with the different well-being elements is that we can double dip. We can experience
Mhm.
multiple elements at the same time, right? So if I've achieved something and I invite someone to celebrate that with me, now I've got positive relationship and achievement happening at the same
Mhm.
time. So it's like a double boosty.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
really like to point that out.
No, that's a really good, connection with achieving something and then inviting someone to celebrate with you,
Mhm.
and achieving that goal. And then you can both celebrate together and then boost your relationship. I would say, I don't know, of all of these, I think engagement is probably my personal favorite. What about you?
That's such a great question. Something that I've been trying to be very intentional about is the practice of positive emotions and
Mm,
experiencing a variety of them. Like I'm practicing my ability to leverage different positive emotions. So out of the 10 that Dr. Fredrickson has written about, I'm picking ones that I don't experience as frequently, like awe. I'll give
right.
that example. We took a family trip to Bryce Canyon and Zion National Park, and I was filled with awe. And I know myself to know, okay, if I'm gonna really experience awe, it probably needs to be like out in nature and
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
same
like
for
even a
me.
sunset or the moon sometimes will do that for me. And
Mhm.
so I'm really trying to be intentional about like identifying the emotion, doing the work of figuring out, okay, what within me would I need to do or experience in order to
Yeah.
feel, experience that sense of that particular positive emotion. So that's one I'm working on the
Yeah.
most.
No, that's great. I would say the same for me, outside in nature. And my favorite thing to do is, I love looking at trees because I really can't explain why. And maybe it's because it's just trees can be like, they're really big, they can be very vast. I mean, they can also be small.
Yeah.
But I love the structure of a tree. They're very resilient. And that just, for me, that brings awe, like just the simplicity of a tree,
Yeah.
but also the strength of a tree. I like engagement because I love the energy I feel when
Yeah.
I'm in a flow. And it's sometimes really hard to break me out of that flow. So I kind of gravitate towards that, especially if I'm engaged in something that I love to do.
Yeah.
So, one question, I know we're getting a little bit behind, but that's okay.
Always
Um,
are.
I was really wanting to ask this question because I was going back and I saw this in another article I read, but this is probably for my own curiosity. But what do you think is the difference between something that gives you pleasure and then something that you enjoy?
Yes, such great questions. And I think the way that I would choose to frame my response is another thing that I'm working on is I'm working on my experiencing self and
Hmm.
my reflecting self. And I
Okay.
think that that can sometimes be the difference between pleasure and enjoyment because it's like my experiencing self is experiencing pleasure. And
Right.
it's not until I'm in my reflective self, almost kind of looking back on it, that I realize how much I enjoyed that.
Okay.
Does
That
that
makes
make sense?
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So pleasure is more so like in the moment, and then enjoyment is you going back and more so like looking back. It's like, man, I really enjoyed that. That was really nice. That was an amazing, almost life-changing experience. And you want to do that again. So that definitely makes sense.
Yeah.
So, as we wrap up the conversation, and if you do have any questions, you can throw them in the chat, and we'll address those questions
Yeah.
at the end. But what makes you happy?
Such a great question. I gave that a lot of thought because you shared with me some of the questions in advance. And my true and honest answer is that what makes me happy probably looks a little bit different every day. But
Mhm.
I was really thinking about like, okay, but what are like the foundational things in my life
Yeah.
that really bring me well-being and happiness? And at the top of my list was my family and my relationships with
Mhm.
my family. So my husband, my daughter, even my dog Darla, who's been making little cameos.
Yeah, I've been seeing.
Um, and then my parents and my sister, and then the extended family as well. Another thing that brings me happiness is when I feel like I'm making a difference in the lives of others. So I think that would probably be experiencing purpose and meaning in terms of like
Yeah.
meaningfully connecting with other people and feeling like I'm helping them in some way. Even if it's as simple as like someone needs help carrying their groceries out of the grocery store,
Yeah.
it makes me so happy to feel like I could help someone else
Yeah.
in big and small ways. Yeah.
Yeah. I think for me, very, very similar to you, what brings me joy and happiness every single day is my family.
Yeah.
Family is probably one of my top values. Faith is a top value for me. Feeling well and healthy, like that's a big value. But I definitely love it when I see, one of my clients share like a win. And it isn't even, it can be, I don't like using the word small, but it could be something that they might feel like it's small. And I'm like, no, that's huge. And I was like, oh, this is what this is all about. So, and you're right. Things that make you happy can vary on a daily basis. It could be the fact that, um, I was resilient through a really tough day, and that just
Yeah.
brings you a lot of sense of accomplishment and achievement. So, we have one question. What's the impact on gratitude practice when the when the attribution goes to God versus self? I'm not even going to try to answer this question at all. So,
I'd love to just share some thoughts on it.
yeah, go for
Um,
it.
I think that that is such a great question because humility is such a beautiful thing. And I think
Mhm.
if we're practicing gratitude and in our attribution, we're saying, okay, this was a God thing, this wasn't a me thing.
Yeah.
I think that that can bring the element of humility. And I think that's really valuable as well. And then just to play off of that, then maybe there can be the aspect of experiencing gratitude for that, gratitude for however you want to frame it or call it. Maybe you're going to call it a blessing if you feel
Yeah.
like it's from God. Um, And then thinking about like, okay, what can I best do then to honor that and to continue to live and act in ways to live up to whatever that
Right.
thing was that I'm giving gratitude for. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're totally right. I think that you can definitely attribute something positive that's happening in your life to God or to a higher power versus yourself and still feel grateful for that.
Totally.
And like you're right, it is humility. But yeah, that was I had to think about that. That's why I threw it back at you. I was like, what?
It's a great question.
Yeah, no, that was a fabulous question. So we're toward the end. So if you do have any other questions, definitely pop them out there and we will address them. But I want to tell Dr. Ayla, I am grateful so much, number one, for meeting you and for your time that you've given to share your knowledge today and just to have a really great conversation on a beautiful Sunday afternoon. And definitely, if you're not already, follow her. And you can also follow me. I am Coach
Yeah.
Angie C. And we do very similar things, but we do them in different ways. So you're going to get great value from following the both of us. So thank you so much. This video recording will be available if if you want to go back and check it out later. But it was an amazing conversation. If you're just joining, you missed it. But we dove deep today. So it's worth going back, drinking some tea, drinking some coffee or whatever, and sitting and listening in. So have an awesome day. Have a blessed day or a blessed evening wherever you are in the world. Bye. And have an awesome day, which I already said. Bye.
Thanks, Angie.
Okay, so that's done. I'm gonna share to IG. I'll do that. I'll do this part later.
All right.
I need to add some content. But yeah, how do you let me stop recording.
You bet.
Stop recording. Do you want to stop cloud recording?